We got to
How you
get
guys,
started.
how you guys doing?
Are you good? You're about to go to Italy.
I am doing really well. Today is episode 20 of the podcast. It's a milestone episode. I feel great about that. They say two things about episode 20. They say it's important because by now you know if you enjoy doing it, which is important for you to play the long game,
All right,
and
so
if people like it.
no on the first question, and maybe on the second.
Maybe, fingers crossed. And so I think we have tick marks on both sides. So I feel good. I feel grateful for our listeners to get to spend time with the two of you. So I feel really good.
That feels pretty good. All right, cool. And are you excited for Italy?
I'm very excited. Yeah, I feel very chill about it now. I was
Austin and I were texting back and forth on it. We have our own secret.
This comes up every fucking time. AJ, you are a very fragile person.
This is Topline.
This month's sponsor is Closed, the industry leader in win-loss analysis. The only thing worse than missing quota is not knowing why. Win-loss analysis with Closed provides detailed and unbiased feedback directly from your buyers. So when you're looking for answers, you'll have the concrete data-driven solutions you need to make the strategic decisions with confidence. If you're curious about how win-loss analysis can boost your win rate, give Closed a try. We'll do a free buyer interview for one of your deals. Visit freebuyerinterview.com now to claim your free interview. That's freebuyerinterview.com now to claim your free interview.
I must say that wall of t-shirts is brilliant. Those were really nicely done t-shirts. I was very
really
impressed.
Cool. It was cool.
My wife is
and loves you.
I will post this on LinkedIn in the next week when we release the episode and I promote the episode. I will also have this, but my wife kept all of the t-shirts from the last 11 years from my first company, Trendkite, and of course, Quota Path, and hung them on the wall. There are some terrible, terrible t-shirts for sure. There's some great ones.
There were some great ones.
There are some great ones.
I think they're all pretty good.
Yeah.
I actually, a couple of them I have on loan. They're actually not even mine.
Because she went ahead and framed them.
They're now on a wall. That's not called a loan. You've taken over.
They're not going anywhere. Sam, I'm having a fucking amazing day. Thanks for asking.
Really?
Yeah, I am. It's great. So there's some days where I just love my job, and today is one of those days.
Oh, that's fucking awesome. Great.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. It's the days where you context switch. We had a phenomenal customer in person that we met. That's why my background is different. I'm in our Philadelphia office right now. I'm by myself. There's 10 open seats right now. And then had a great board conversation with one of our board members, good advisory, great management one-on-ones this morning. So I'm feeling good. A lot of context switching. That's when we get energy, when we're energized, it's because we go from one conversation that we feel like really great about something. We take like one or two things from it and we take that and carry it on to the next conversation. I'm speaking for you guys right now, but that's how CEOs get energy is that we're able to like get really powered by being able to connect the dots on multiple conversations in the same day.
But you know, the interesting thing about that is like they have like, it also is the type of conversation, like good conversations energize, bad conversations take the energy out. And I think I'm learning to like predict which conversation is going to be a little bit more challenging and thinking about when you want to have those conversations and kind of stacking up the ones that have the potential to be really good. Like customer conversations really energize me. So if you like stack those up, you have 3 of those, you're Superman at the end of that like 3-hour period.
Yeah, can take on the world.
That's a lot of the work is like, you're going to get energy from things that you're probably pretty good at, and you're probably going to get drained by things that maybe you're not good at. And that's probably an indication on where you should delegate and what you should do. What's your superpower? So that
zone of competence versus zone of genius framework is super helpful. Zone of competence, things you're really good at, but they don't energize you, and zone of genius, things you're good at and they energize you. And when you actually like start writing that list out, Sam, you're right. Like it just helps you understand where you should be focusing your time, things you need to hand off to other people. But you can't have 100% of your things in the zone of genius either. You just need to have some that are through the week.
I would say every day. Like, I just think you just can point to one thing and look back at it. Because we've all had the days where we started on a board conversation or something that we didn't feel as strong about or didn't feel as confident about. And then like it carries you. But then if you have a pick me up as well. This is why Asid is a genius. He does all of his conversations in the afternoon. So he's only
early morning board calls.
No one
guys.
can bring him down at all.
The worse the market gets, the further in the day this board call goes.
I just get too tired.
It's Friday at 3 p.m. is my next board call. I have like moved it there.
That's wild. I don't agree. I like getting it out of the way. I like, I had my board call at 9:30 this in the morning on Monday. And, it was a tough call. And I was like, fine, fuck it. Monday's going to be a grind. I tell you guys, I was born on Tuesday. Tuesdays are always like my best day of the week. And I was one time I was trying to figure out why. And I Googled what day is, my birthday on the actual year. And it's a Tuesday anyway. So I was like, Monday, I'm doing well also. And so one of the things that I just really appreciate about life is you can have a shit day and you can just go to sleep and you get to try again the next day. You're always one day, one decision away from being on the right path. You're never miles from the path. That's only in your head. You're always one step away. You want to get back to the healthy life, cook dinner for yourself tonight,
Yeah.
That whole deal.
I just checked the day I was born on. I had no idea. It's a Friday. That's
Friday. And there you go. And now you got the Friday.
I love Fridays. Oh, shit. I had no idea.
I was a Saturday. I know that for sure. On the weekend. Yeah.
You enjoy your weekends.
I do enjoy I was born at 7:37 in the morning. Do you guys know what time you were born?
No,
Probably
but it's not. It doesn't surprise me that you know exactly what.
Well, I know exactly what it is because it's 7:37. What's 7:37, Sam?
It's a plane.
Oh,
from an aviation background.
Oh shit!
All of the stars lined up.
This is the quick story on the 737. My dad was on a trip. I'm the oldest, so I was the firstborn. And my dad was on a flight. He's a pilot. My mom's a flight attendant, and he was flying with with another pilot, and he was the captain of a 737. That's true. And he was like, well, what happens if they're born early? Like, no, doctors said it will be like months away. Don't worry about it. And he got a call like late at night. Of course, this is like 1985. So it was like hand called from the hotel that I was going to be born the next morning. And he like got deadheaded back to Pittsburgh, where I was born. And he showed up at the hospital and he walked in and a nurse was walking by with a baby and said, Mr. Bruno, Captain Bruno. And he was like, yeah. And then just handed over the baby. I said, here it is. So
that's really cute.
That's the
and he was in his like a pilot uniform.
Yes, he was in his pilot's uniform still.
That probably helped as well.
So
he wasn't wearing any pants.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just being silly.
So that's the Tuesday.
That's
Tuesday down.
We're recording this on what's today? Wednesday or Thursday?
Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday. I'm going to Toronto tomorrow.
Yeah, you are. The one day I'm not there.
I know. Well,
I'll be in Toronto next week, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love that you guys coordinated this shit with me.
Well, you chose to go to Italy for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's selfish. Let's get started. Asid, what do we got first on the docket?
So, Sam, you made a post a couple of days ago, maybe last week, about go-to-market alignment and signs that a company doesn't have it. And I found that really interesting. So I started looking into a couple of things, and one of them was the state of marketing. And I found Gartner's State of the Marketing report, for which they survey somewhere between 300 to 600 of the world's leading CMOs, 300 to 600 depending on the year. And so there were a few really interesting takeaways that I thought we could discuss. The first, like the most summarized takeaway, was that budgets are down, the costs are up, and yields are decreasing. As you dig into it, there's some fascinating data. The first is that marketing's budget as a percent of total revenue has gone down after the pandemic in most sectors and has not reached back up to the pre-pandemic levels. So the high was to 11.2% of revenue in 2019, went down to 6.4% in 2021. came up to 9.5% in 22, but is back to 9.1%. So we're below the pre-pandemic levels. Marketers are, in essence, a little bit upset that they've been asked to have a larger impact in a more sustainable way with less resources, and they feel kind of stuck because of it. Another thing that stood out was that only 22% of CMOs at the start of this year felt that the increase in interest rate and recession risk would negatively impact their marketing strategies. So a significant majority did not think this would be a factor. Now, 86% have been asked to significantly change how they achieve sustainable results. 75% have pressure to do more with less. And 71% didn't feel that they had the right budgets. So I guess the first question is that why were CMOs so optimistic about how things will play out for them in this market? And secondly, isn't this the failure of a CEO in a way that if your executive team doesn't recognize what's happening in the world around you by the time Q3 2021 rolls around, and it was quite clear that inflation is a problem, interest rates are going up, and the following implications, we all know what they're going to be. If you've got so many CMOs thinking this way, whose fault is that? Obviously the CMOs a little bit, but also probably the CEOs. Sam, what do you think?
I think that I think it's probably just fundamental attribution error. I think we all overestimate the degree of our success that comes from our individual efforts and underestimate the forces of the market, which is a theme that we talk about all the time when we come together every week. And so I just think it's people's natural inclination to assume that the world outside is not as relevant as the thing that's right in front of them, not understanding that the world outside is impacting what's both right in front of them and around the next corner. So I feel for marketers because I think it tends to be the hardest go-to-market job, which is how do you tell the story to a large group of people that gets them interested enough that they want to have a conversation. I tend to think that the head of the sales job and this is something that I talk about a lot, which is that if you assume that sales generates demand, you're going to be generating very expensive demand. If you assume that marketing generates demand, which is another way of saying gets meetings and gets interest, then salespeople can focus on what they do best, which is turning demand into money. But I do think that's a fundamentally easier job. I think getting somebody interested in changing is way harder than having a conversation with somebody who's open to changing and convincing them that your solution is the right one. So I think marketers have a very tough job because it's poorly understood by CEOs and as a consequence, relatively and consistently underfunded relative to sales.
Yeah.
And, and that's why
that's the crux of it, isn't it? That marketers feel that it's underfunded and CEOs are like marketing's overfunded, or boards are anyway. That's what I've heard. I think, Asad, from your data that you're citing, marketers aren't economists. Who knew? But neither are CEOs. And I agree with Sam that we're all living in our own world and trying to make the best decisions that we can. I appreciate that marketing had an optimistic view because I had an optimistic view. I think we would probably still today, if the question was phrased differently about the future, probably be in that we don't think it's going to adversely affect us going forward, right? So if you ask marketers, has it affected you? Yes. Is it going to affect you in the future? No, we're good now. And I think that that's probably a piece of this. The percentage that you said, and that's on CAC, right? Cost of acquisition. What was that? 9%?
Percent of revenue.
Total marketing budget.
Marketing budget
revenue.
as a percent of revenue. So not cost of acquisition, but technically marketing CAC, I guess, if you would want to say that.
Yeah.
That's fascinating because it just assumes that there's this. Is this software companies? What is the
This is across all sectors. They didn't break it into tech, but most sectors, they showed 2 or 3 other sectors, and it was give and take the same for everyone. What's interesting is that in tech, 45% of costs are generally sales and marketing, right? So let's say if marketing is between 10 and 15%, most of that cost is then on the sales side.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense because OTEs went up. So bases, on target earnings went up. So bases went up with that. And we were paying a heavier penny for that. That's going to come down quite considerably the end of this year. I think
compensation might?
Well, the cost of the sales, like just the less sellers, you have a more efficient team. I think we can all, I know this from firsthand from both our customers, but from ourselves, the efficiency, the sales to earnings per rep has gone up this year. Meaning
that's because you have fewer reps and you're sending them.
Exactly. So you have a more efficient sales team. And so inherently that cost as a percentage of overall, I would expect to come down. And then marketing is going to probably inverse and go, I think you're going to see a fairly big investment in the second half or the rest of this year. We keep saying second half now, we're in it.
We're in it.
And we're going to talk about this, but we have some big events. Fall is a big event driver for our industries. And I think that's going to be the start of like seeing it. And I have very optimistic view on pipeline generation in Q3 into Q4 for organizations, specifically in tech sector.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
I hope you're right.
I'm usually the pessimist on this stuff. I'm usually like, you guys.
Are you? I feel like you're the optimist and Austin's the pessimist.
I don't know.
Let me share with you this post by one of my favorite marketers, Jeff Reekers.
Yeah.
Jeff was the CMO at Aircall. Now he started a company called Champion, and he wrote this just 1 hour ago. So this is hot from the press, but I thought it was interesting. He said, random observation. I've been surprised with the number of founders and go-to-market leaders I've had conversations with lately that are still attaching results to a market downturn. If you are having a churn problem, that's because you have a churn problem. If you are having growth efficiency problems, you have growth efficiency problems. If you are having a culture problem, you have a culture problem. If you're having valuation problems, you have a valuation problem. It isn't that the downturn is causing these issues. It's that the good times masked them.
I don't know if I agree.
I agree.
But okay, let me try to provide the counterpoint of view. So I think if you are the captain of a ship and you say that the ocean doesn't matter, that's kind of crazy, right? Like the waves matter, the type of waves that you have. And I think being a CEO is similar. Like you are not running a business in a vacuum. You run it in the market. And so you build things that you sell into the market. And so how the economy is doing has an implication on the sentiment of your buyer. Are they in a spending mind frame or risk minimization mind frame? What things are they prioritizing? I think when interest rates are low and demand is easier to generate and the economy is growing, you're prioritizing a set of things that is very different to when you're in a market like this. So I don't think that it is fair to say that all these problems are not connected to the market. Now, that doesn't mean you put your hands up and say that the market does that it is what it is and I'm not going to address them. I think we have a lot of control over these issues, but the reason for the issue might have a lot to do with the market. Just like when we were winning, it wasn't all us. Sam, you spoke about this a lot in this podcast and in other places, that when we're winning, it's us in the market. When we're losing, it's us in the market. And I do think that way. So I think it's a little bit too easy to just say all these problems are our own problems and forget that the market is there. It kind of goes to the point that we were discussing, which is that 22% of CMOs not realizing that this market is going to have an implication for them is a problem. And I do think CEOs and founders, I think a lesson for them should be that macro does matter. And we're not economists, but we have to get a lot better at understanding the macro environment than I think we have been in the past.
Well, let me take your analogy. Let me take your analogy on the ocean here, Asid, and take it a step further and say like you're going down a river and you're fine. The water level's fine. The water level.
Is this a step further? You're just switching the metaphor.
Yeah, well, same thing. Well, there's water involved, Sam. Come on. Get on my page.
All right. We're in a river. We're not on the ocean anymore. It's the river.
So whatever. Anyway, the water level's falling and
Are we in a kayak?
You're in a boat. Kayak. You're in a wooden kayak. Sure.
Are you there with me or am I alone?
You're by yourself on this one. You're on this journey by yourself.
Today's business landscape is full of uncertainty, and succeeding as a go-to-market leader has never been more challenging. Pavilion is here to provide you with the education, support, and resources you need to grow, learn, and unlock your full potential. Join more than 10,000 of the world's leading go-to-market executives in a private membership community designed specifically to fuel your success. Visit joinpavilion.com and use the code TOPLINE20 to get 20% off your membership. That's joinpavilion.com and the code is TOPLINE20 to get 20% off your Pavilion membership. And now back to the show.
So the water level is dripping and going down and going down, and you're starting to hit the rocks on the bottom. And let's just pretend like you're in a boat and you have boxes in this boat, and like those boxes are dragging you down. Is it a water level problem, or is it you have too much weight in the boat problem? Well, if you take out the boxes, you're not going to hit the bottom. Like all of it, I think.
But what if the boxes have your food, and when you get to wherever you're going,
then that's
now you're going to
problem.
starve?
That's problematic. But I think it's ultimately for you to like, actually what's happening is you're able to focus in on the real problem that you have. And I think that's what the spirit of the post is saying is like, hey, if you have a churn problem, it did mask it a little bit and you could cover it in board conversations with your growth, but now you actually really have to focus in on it. And that is a true problem. If you have to fundraise and you had a challenging valuation, well, that is something that it was masked 2 years ago. So you're going to have to figure that out and fix it. And I actually really enjoyed the post because it's what I'm hearing is like, look, we're really getting and honing in on the 2 or 3 things that matter. And we have to figure those out as a company, as organizations. Nothing else matters.
I would tend to agree. I come out more on the side of the problem with those kinds of posts, right? Or it's like when the tide goes out, you figure out who's swimming naked, is that there's held up some ideal of a business organization, business structure, business efficiency, and it's presented as in some ways like virtuous versus the those that lack virtue. It's the heroes versus the villains, and the villains were all the people that were the hop-in and the companies that raised too much money at too high a valuation. And I tend to agree that it's like waves on the ocean. You've got to adjust for the environment, and that doesn't mean that there's no like we talk about, God is not weighing in on this. This is not like Yahweh or Jesus or Muhammad or whomever saying, this is how a good business actually is. This is what a good business actually looks like. It is that there's relative performance to the market. And if the market, it's not that the churn, both things are true. They're just the inverse statements. It's not that you didn't have a churn problem because you had a perfect business and now you have a shitty business and you have a churn problem. It's that the dynamics changed and your situation changed, which for me is why product market fit is not a static state. It's a dynamic state. This was the year or the last like 12 to 18 months is the first time I heard somebody say you've fallen out of product market fit.
Yeah.
Which I think is because that's not how people talk about it like it's a checkbox. Now I have product market fit. Now it's time to scale.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is it's dynamic. And the last thing I'll say is, and it includes price. It includes price. And price is part of the product market fit. And the whole trick is if you have to lower prices because you're in a more difficult economic environment, can you still make money at your business at the lower price? And if you can, then you've adjusted dynamically. But I don't think like there's no secret room where all will be revealed. And it turns out that all of the companies that now have low churn are better companies. They're better in this environment.
There was part of the discussion last week was around the story of a Series B company that when the market was hot was doing well. They'd raised a bunch of money. They were one of those companies that had raised a Series B round, but was probably a late seed, early Series A company. And when you look at signals like growth and retention in that market, they had product market fit. And so they were going forward. Now in this market, they've been stress tested and things are really bad. They have really high churn. They're not growing. Culture is tough. And obviously they've realized that they don't have product market fit, but some people feel that CEO should have known this before. And it's like, well, how are you going to know? If your growth is best in class and your churn is best in class, your net revenue retention is best in class, how do you know you don't have product market fit? Like you actually have to be hit by the downturn to learn the lesson. I don't think I think the point you made is a good point. Like product market fit evolves based on the state of the market. There is another thing in here that is kind of interesting. So 63% of CMOs still plan to grow their investments in tech, even though 75% are facing pressures to cut costs. One side of this argument is that CMOs spend too much money on tech, keep wanting to buy new things, even though they're not getting maximum benefit and utilization out of what they have. The other side of that argument from CMOs is that the world is constantly changing. Our job is really hard. And for us to be able to provide you results in this quickly evolving environment, we do need the best-in-class technologies out there. So the fact that we bought something expensive 2 years ago doesn't mean we can't consider the best-in-class tech now. And so we have to spend this money. We hear you that we have to cut costs. We're probably going to cut those costs at the people level, and marketing roles are the second most laid off roles at companies after internal recruitment. So that's the second side of the argument. AJ, when you hear that, how does this make you feel? Like when you think of marketing wanting to buy more tech, do you get it that they're doing this because it's so dynamic, or how does it make you feel?
I think depending on, and we're talking about Series B and C, so we're talking about later stage companies. I would expect that as a CEO, you have a CMO that you're trusting as a thought partner that is an experience, been there, done that. I lived in the MarTech world in terms of like what my previous company did and how we sold to marketers. The world of MarTech changed very rapidly in 2006 to 2015. There was mass consolidation. It hasn't really changed as much. I'm not saying that there's not innovation. I'm just saying that there was like we're seeing in sales tech, there's hundreds and thousands of players that just kind of like rolled up into one, bigger players that you had with those systems, whether it was like the HubSpot, Marketo, even Omniture days, and those tools acquired mass acquisition, so they were fully end to end. I think what you're seeing is you're turning things on within those platforms and turning them on and turning them off. And so it's not that you have to stand up or implement new technologies, but that we can go as a marketer spend money similar to you would do paid or SEO or ad spend, either kind of like switches that we go on and off. And that's what I'm hearing. Like there's a lot of infrastructure or plumbing type of technologies that have a lot of like standing up and lead time that they need to get implemented. Marketing isn't like that. I know this from experience because I think we were a rip and replace tool. And so it was just like a quick on or quick off in our industry.
Interesting. Sam, there's this, you would like hearing this, 54% increase in event marketing and 53% increase in sponsorships in 2023. You're a beneficiary probably of some of this. Like, are you noticing this trend play out? You've got Go-to-Market 2023 coming up. And why do you think this is happening? Why are people prioritizing this so much more now than they were before?
Well, I think, so first of all, sponsorship revenue may be going up, but recurring sponsorship revenue is not going up. We have two kinds of sponsors. We have people that sponsor specific events with tangible deliverables, and then we have people that sort of want to be aligned on an ongoing basis. And that was a softer sell, and frankly, more money. And those are going away. But we are seeing strong demand for sponsorships for our GTM event. You know, the story of GTM was that I mean, do you all know the full story? It's sort of, it's just fascinating. It was that, you know, we had raised money in 2021. We were very enthusiastic and ebullient and, you know, classic. I may lecture on LinkedIn, but I've made every mistake that I talk about on LinkedIn. And probably the more recently I've posted about something is the more recently I've made that mistake. So we signed a contract with the Omni in Nashville for last year, for October 2022, to do this big event. And we guaranteed something like in the order of $400,000 worth of room nights for the Omni. And we guaranteed all of these other expenses, making it a 7-figure investment. And then the economy went south, and we had these road shows that went well from one perspective, but where we didn't really have our execution sponsorship engine working really well. So we tried to get out of the agreement, and we couldn't. They wouldn't let us. And our lawyers looked at it. They're like, yeah, they can sue you and they'll win because it's very clearly written and they've done this before. So we said, okay, fine, we're doing it. We're just going to do it for 2023. And it was a little bit at the beginning of the year. I'm saying this because it has a happy ending, but at the beginning of the year, this was an albatross. This was something that was sort of an existential threat. It wasn't going to capsize us, but it was going to be like, man, that's going to really fucking suck if we do not hit our bid on this thing. And a bunch of things have conspired to come together. And I think one of them is that our brand has continued to grow. And so we are now closely aligned with Insight and closely aligned with Marlin, and a bunch of other investors are putting their stamp of approval, largely because they don't have the resources, as we talked about, the operating partner platforms at these big institutional investors is not being funded to the same degree it used to be. So they need support and help in augmenting their programming and augmenting their community. And that's what Pavilion has stepped in to do. At the same time that there's been this whole dynamic around aligning go-to-market and realizing that as we're talking about that, marketing doesn't sit in a silo and sales doesn't sit in a silo and customer success doesn't sit in a silo. And the way that you want to drive, if you want to drive and navigate this environment, if you want to do more with less, or at least run the business and not have the boxes on the kayak in the middle of the rivers that are weighing you down, then you have to align these different functions. You can't send a marketer off to a marketing conference and a salesperson off to a sales conference. And that's why, and that has been the emergent theme for what we're going to be talking about in Nashville at GTM, which is all of that has come together so that over the last month and a half, we've seen massive ticket sales. I now think that we're probably going to reach capacity on the event, which is about 400 people. We are selling lots of sponsorships. It's going to be a profitable event for us, which is super exciting. And I do think it's going to be a catalyst. And that speaks to, well, why are people going to SaaStr? Why are they going to inbound? Me and AJ were talking last week about how I think people still want to buy stuff. I think that's people still want to transact and do business. The point of, I guess on an inflation adjusted basis, the real rate of return in the equities markets is something like 8%, 7%, adjusted over 100 years or something like that. Well, what is that all about? What does that mean? Because at any given time, the stock market isn't supposed to go up, right? Why is it not supposed to go up? Because it's supposed to already represent all future growth that people expect of companies. So why are we continually surprised on the upside? It's because we're fundamentally optimistic and we fundamentally believe that the future will be better than the present, or at least in America, but really Western democracies. So I think people want to buy stuff. They just need more tangible outcomes. They need to be able to hold it in their hand. And that's where events come into play, where you can say, this is something we can do. There are people, everybody that's going to an event, to just think about the psychology of an event attendee. If you're going to Nashville, Asid lives in Toronto. AJ lives outside of Philadelphia. Maybe AJ will fly his plane down, but you had to do something that was not the status quo in order to come to an event. If you're flying to SaaStr, it's because you're flying to SaaStr. You're somebody who wants change, who's interested in change, who's interested in being dynamic, who's interested in transacting. So I think events are really powerful in that way because they catalyze a group of people that chose to go there in the first place, which is the kind of people that are interested in change and interested in commerce. And I also think that they provide experiences, and we know that that's what matters to people more than anything right now. People are tired of being on Zooms. They're tired of doing business virtually. They want to meet in person. And the rush and the thrill that we get when we meet each other in person as human beings is something that I think is deeper than words. It's about who we are and where we come from and how we used to convene in villages and tribes. And we miss that. We miss that human connection. I think so. That's why I'm going to Toronto tomorrow. I'm going for one dinner. I'm going to see Josh Gutman, and I'm hopefully going to see Butch Langlois, and I'm going to see maybe Stephen Defina, and I'm going to see Mark Saunders, and it's going to be awesome, and it will be friggin' worth it. And it's worth it because human beings want and crave connection. If we were some different kind of animal, maybe it would be different, but that's my long-winded answer.
Here's the other thing with this, Sam, that's like so true. And I'm realizing this right now as we're talking about, in 2020 and 2021, your event, which was a virtual event, was called Transform, right? And that there was a lot of transformation around that was happening. But think about this year as we've switched from growth to efficiency. People have had to they've had to change what their roles are, and they've had to change their expectations. I'll take Sarah Strope, our CMO, who has now moved over to more of our chief customer officer. She's managing that team. And so what do events allow her to do? They allow her to just speak about her experiences, to teach other people what's going on, what's happening in the world. Marlon's a great example, Sam. Dale Jones, he's the head of RevOps at Meltwater.
Oh, he just messaged me on LinkedIn.
Dale's a good friend of mine. Dale and I worked together in 2007. And
did you tell him somebody who's been browbeating him to sign up for Pavilion?
He's going to be, they're a Marlin company. He's going to be at GTM. He's like, AJ, let's meet up. So you can browbeat him in person there. But we were talking about like all of their learnings and lessons that he's gone through in the last year. And we're just all excited to come together at GTM 2023 and like talk about these. And that's exactly right. So it's the in-person connection that we've talked about on this show before, but we've also just talked about, has felt surface level. Today, that's not true. Today, we have something meaningful to connect with. We have like actual stuff that we really want to talk to and connect with, whether it's in Toronto without Osid or whatever. We want to actually have those conversations. And I think the events, Inbounds, Aster, GTM 2023, they represent that. And that's why I'm so excited. So it goes back to your original question on like, why do marketers feel this way? Well, this is why. This is why, because we have we have actual content that we want to share to the world, the lessons of our brand refresh. Like I am so excited to talk about like how our company is now positioned to meet a different buyer and what we're doing about it. So
it's a combination of community, so that we can share experiences, develop deeper relationships, and demand, right? Like those are like the two core things that we're optimizing for when we're spending money on events. Would that be like a fair?
I love that Osid took like a 25-minute spiel from Sam and myself and just boiled it down. So it's these two things, right?
Basically, but it made sense. Sam, you were talking about go-to-market, and the conversation I had before this podcast was connected to this. So it's a company that's doing 40 million in the sales tech space. And they've realized that when the market was really good and they had go-to-market siloed in 3 different teams, there wasn't many issues. It was completely fine. Then the market got challenging. When the market got challenging, you have to look at the ways that this is testing you and your business, the problems that are boiling up, and then be able to move quickly to address them. And those teams being in a silo creates slowness in the equation. And that only presents itself in this moment. You realize, oh shit, if we need to be nimble enough to be able to navigate in a period like this appropriately, we need a go-to-market function. We don't need a sales function, a marketing function, a CS function. So this shift towards go-to-market is catching on.
I 100% agree. And I think, what we're going to be talking about. So me, Sid Kumar, and Allison Ellsworthy from HubSpot, we're going to be on the main stage. The main stage at HubSpot Inbound. I don't. AJ, are you going to be on the main stage?
Yeah, I'm actually sharing the stage with Reese Witherspoon. Reese is actually introducing me.
I didn't see your name on the poster, so I wasn't sure if you were going to be there. Anyway, the point is this. I'm just messing. Is that the pre-sale funnel has been well architected and well understood. And for so much, during sort of like a growth at any cost, growth at all cost mindset, the business, everything stops at closed won. And I think go to market, that phrase, that idea is not just about stopping at closed won. It's about architecting the entire customer journey and really diving deep into the post-sale funnel. Because this is true for us, right? For all of time, for Pavilion through recently, which is totally insane, but it is true. Everybody used to say you must have so much amazing data on your members. I'd say not really. They're all using third-party Slack, Zoom. We're using third-party services. We don't have a digital platform. Now we finally do. And now we have a great head of RevOps, Tom Andrews, and he runs everything through Salesforce. And so now I can open up a page on Osid Zaman in Salesforce and see every event you've been to, whether you've been to an event in the last 90 days, if you've taken any classes. And the point is that there's been this urgency to architect the post-sale funnel. And that's because you cannot grow. What I've been on the road to Nashville with Jocko, and everything is you can't grow if churn is too high, and churn itself is a lagging indicator. Churn happens after months and months after someone's decided. First is this worth it? Am I getting the value from it? And then they're like, I think I'm going to cancel. And then they're finally like, all right, I'm going to cancel. And you need to get to them at the moment that they say, is this worth it? Where they are still persuadable. And that's the journey of go-to-market is creating an architected customer journey that everybody can see, and then the next part for me is like, okay, I need every KPI must have a human being whose job is on the line to deliver that KPI. And the other problem that we've had in the past, which we're moving out of, but we've had it in the past, is who's responsible for retention? And sometimes somebody says, we're all responsible for it. And my experience is that is a terrible fucking answer.
Yeah, I think revenue everybody is responsible for, but those individual KPIs have to have an owner. Otherwise, things get tricky. Jocko keeps saying that recurring revenue is the result of recurring impact, right? Like it's this statement of his. So I went back after, I think it was not the last episode, but the one before that, you were talking about how we assume in SaaS that you retain customers kind of forever. And so I run a 16-year-old organization. So I went back and I looked into all of our tech stack as well as our service providers to be like, is there even one that has been here for 16 years? There wasn't one thing that we used, company, tool, anything. Not even the people that gave us our printers in the office was the same company for the entire period of time. There wasn't even one that was there for 10 years.
So if you're a vendor of STA, you've been put on notice.
Yeah.
What was the oldest? I'm curious about the distribution. What was the distribution? Like on average, how often do you replace things?
Technology, almost every 4 years, there's a change. We just moved ATS systems off of Salesforce onto something else. That was a 4 years on Salesforce, then we got off.
4 years. Amazing.
That's so interesting that you just called Salesforce ATS an ATS.
Well,
system.
they had this ATS built on top of Salesforce, right? And then what happened was, and it was beautiful because you got the power of Salesforce as a CRM, but then this ATS built on top of it. Bullhorn, that's the leader in the space, they buy these small ATS companies. They bought our friend's company, Talent Rover, and then they just stopped giving any resources to it. So the product just stays static, but time keeps moving, your needs keep evolving, and so the value you're getting diminishes. And so at the end, it was just horrendous what we had, and we had to move. It was a pretty bad situation. We have a few minutes left. You guys want to talk about anxiety or how long to give a VP of sales to have an impact before we wrap this up?
Well,
AJ, what do you want to talk about?
Anxiety. What specifically? What stats do you have on anxiety?
So this was interesting.
Here's the point. Everybody's got it, and it's your fucking fault.
I was talking to my investor. I won't name the investor, but it was actually very fascinating. He's the managing partner, he's the founder of this fund, and he was talking a little bit about this in general. Like we were just talking about health stuff and things gone through, and he's gone through a lot. And I think we just brought this up in there earlier. He's had a gamut of things, and the thing that he said is like, at this point in time, like nothing scares me. You just like wake up and you're just like kind of dealing with it. I found that really fascinating. Like very, 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 very successful person. This person is like one of the most successful people I've talked to in a long time. And the idea of health and how you like deal with it, and like where anxiety can, for me anyway, manifest is around health. And I appreciated that world view of just like every day's a new day. You kind of like take it as it comes and you deal with it. And so every single time there's a health issue after that, it feels like it's like lessened because they're taking it on.
I think resiliency needs adversity, right? Like you need adversity to be resilient. And so I think the more adversity we go through in various different ways, the more resilient we become. Like there was probably a customer you would have lost at the start of the year that would have given you a level of anxiety that's quite different to now if you lose them now, right? Right?
Oh my God, if you had told me some of the numbers from a year ago, I would have lost my fucking shit.
Okay, so here's the anxiety thing. So Wall Street Journal had this really interesting article that looked into anxiety as a disorder, and there are a few things that stood out. So in 2019, 8% of respondents in a federal survey reported symptoms related to anxiety disorders. That number recently jumped to 27%. Now, nearly 3 in every 100 people who enter a healthcare facility leave with a diagnosed anxiety disorder. The pandemic obviously had a lot to do with this, but on the other side, we also know that doctors can be trigger happy with diagnosing disorders and prescribing medications. ADHD is one area where that criticism falls. There is more awareness now and more avenues for treatment. Antidepressants only really work for 40% of the people that take them for this particular issue, but we have alternatives like therapy, psychedelics, lifestyle changes, supplements, etc. But these are not easily accessible to everyone. So the question is, if 27% of people have an anxiety-related issue, this is something that business leaders have to probably take into account or into consideration, because an overly anxious workforce can't be productive the same way, and it probably is bad for morale as well. We obviously can't be the ones to solve it, but do we have a role to play in helping people manage it is the question that comes up.
EJ, what do you think?
Do we have a way to manage it?
Is it your responsibility? Is it your responsibility?
No, I can't manage like people's feelings and like that. No.
So you don't care. You don't care about people. You want them to be anxious. What
we
an
did this
asshole.
only to get you into that spot.
I mean, is it our like general? Do we have ownership and responsibility at the end of the day? No, they have their own. We can set up.
Are they more anxious than they've ever been?
Yeah. More people are anxious than they have ever been, and the anxiety levels also seem to be higher. And the reality is that the pandemic played a number on a lot of people, right?
Politics played a number on people. Yeah. Like still today, like there's just so much fucking going on in the world. Like,
but maybe. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just don't think we're ever gonna like it's shoveling sand into a wake of the ocean, to bring up the ocean analogy again. It's coming back full circle.
Strange it's just like metaphors. What?
It's just like it's an unending pile of things. It's like you could do the best you can. You set up we've talked so many times about the safeguards and the people and the safety nets, and we had a whole show on the politics piece of it. But like if it's our job, look, all three of us have taken on the responsibility to manage the emotion, to manage the safety and security and the environment of our teams. If what you're saying is true, Asa, then it's getting worse. Then what good are we doing?
Well,
now you're saying two different things. You're saying you are responsible or you're not.
Well, we've done a lot, but it's not working. So then is this even our thing to do anything with?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
The other point of view on that is that if you look at elite sports teams, and I think companies are way more like sports teams than they are like families, right? Like we're in this to win and performance matters. Sports teams, they look at things like your diet, your sleep cycle, when you go out, and how you manage your nervous system. And I think the understanding they have is a person who is feeling extremely anxious and doesn't have the tools to regulate their nervous system is not going to be able to perform well when time comes to perform well. I don't think this is a problem companies can solve for people. But I do think there's a role for companies to play doing a lot of the things, AJ, that you mentioned, right? Like that you guys are already doing for people. I think the biggest thing I've learned is a lot of leaders and executives try to come across as superheroes to the organization. They feel that they have to be this force that can't be impacted in any negative way. I have to project this stability. And I've noticed that when you are human to your workforce and yet they look at you as a human, it creates a psychological safety for them to feel okay about the feelings that they have and then go and address them in the various different ways they can. I think that's probably the most important.
That's the most important. Being a calming voice for your organization is the most important. And I say this because my thinking has evolved on this. Like, I think I culturally have always been like, it's like our job to 100% make sure that everything is perfect, that you have nothing to worry about and you sit down at your keyboard and you're coding or whatever, and you have to worry about all the shit. But like, frankly, we all have people on our management teams that have gone through a lot of shit this year. Like there's just so much. I don't know if it's just this year in particular, or if it's just exasperated, whether it's personal or whatever. I think that that's something that's just like, hey, if I'm trying to take that on and I'm accountable to that, what's that doing to my own anxiety? And so like, I did have that thought, and frankly, it was it was hurting my own anxiousness. And so I'm like, well, fuck it. I've just evolved my thinking in hopefully a good way, a productive way. I believe the thing you just said, Asid, but maybe I'm wrong.
Sam, how do you think? What do you think?
I think it's a very complicated problem. Which is a way of saying that you said resiliency can only happen in adversity. Maybe this global anxiety is the precursor to global enlightenment. What is the thing? Because you and me are listening to The Power of Now, and Eckhart Tolle talks about how the human race needs to wake up and be present, or we're going to destroy ourselves. And he believes that it's possible. And on the one hand, it sounds ridiculous or stupid. On the other hand, I'm like, but I am listening to this now, and I hadn't listened to it before. Yeah. So maybe there is something. And for me, Monday I wasn't feeling it, but even Monday when I had some friends in town, some pavilion members. We went out. We went to some cannabis party for the cannabis industry on Friday, which was actually really cool. So maybe my dopamine receptors
Tuesday
were low.
was fantastic.
Well, part of it is, are you living healthy? Exactly what you said, Asid, because that plays a difference. And that's why I said you're always one step away from the path. You get a good night's sleep, you cook some good dinner, you go work out, you meditate, you're right back there. And then I guess some part of me wonders like, well, this is what I needed to go through. That's for sure. This past year to get to where I want to get to in my life and my mindset and the kind of person I want to be. And maybe this is what we need as a race. I don't know, but I know that there's a lot of frailty, which is sort of the opposite of resiliency, and coddling the anxiety probably doesn't help either.
Yeah.
Probably the best thing is a group of people that force themselves to evolve beyond anxiety because they decide that they can't live with it in that state anymore.
There's an anxiety disorder called obsessive compulsive disorder. And a lot of people have it. It's the 7th most debilitating disease in the world. 1 in, I think, 5 people have some form of it. The therapy for it is really interesting. It's this thing called exposure response prevention, ERP. And basically what it is you list out all the things, all these rituals that you have to do. And if you don't do them, they make you feel so anxious. You rank them according to this thing called the subjective unit of distress. So how much anxiety does it cause you? You kind of rank it 1 to 10. And then you just have to start exposing yourself to it and sit with that anxiety for a little bit. But then you realize, if I didn't wash my hands 7 times, I don't do it 7 times, I'm going to do it 5 times. It's going to stress me out, but then I'll keep sitting with that and I'll feel a little less worse. And then I'll realize, nothing fell apart when I didn't do it for the 7th time. And then the next time you won't even feel compelled to do it. So you are right that we can't prodle. Usually to deal with anxiety, you kind of have to face it head on.
Sorry for being the pessimist at the beginning of the conversation.
Bless you, Sam.
Thank you. I just sneezed. Well, and that's the same way that they deal with allergies, by the way. Allergy treatment for men, at least, my wife, Camille, her allergy treatment for dogs is drops, little drops of dog allergen that she puts on her tongue, and you slowly build up. It's just like iocane powder.
How long does that take?
Years.
Wow. Years?
Yeah, months, 18, 24 months. Yeah, it takes a long time.
And the people do this before they buy the dog, or
No, they do it once they realize that they're allergic to dogs. Camille has never stopped bringing dogs into our house, whether or not she's been allergic. There's 3 around me right now, and they're all lazy pieces of shit. Not one of them.
Well, you've been sneezing up a storm during this conversation. Maybe you need the drops.
I'm getting over a cold.
You guys, shout outs.
Yeah, shout outs and wins of the week. What you got, AJ?
Oh, look at that. I probably have given a shout out to my wife in one of the 20 episodes that we've done, but here's the thing. There's 3 things. 1, the wall of fame for t-shirts. She's awesome. 2, she has listened to every episode. And 3, she gave me feedback that I wasn't funny enough in the last episode, so that I needed to kick it up.
I think you've been great this episode, just to give you some feedback.
Oh, thank you. I started, you guys this is what I love this. I have had a great day. You both started with positive validation of me, and then you shit sandwiched it. I got some negative feedback in the middle of it, and then I got some positive at the end of it. You guys are great. So shout out to my wife, Sam.
Shout out.
I'm gonna give a shout out. I'll give a shout out to my wife, Camille Zarski. She is having a great August and a great July for her store, The 7 Fine Jewelry, and she's gonna have a huge Labor Day weekend, and it's gonna be a big birthday for her. So we're very happy for her. Gonna give a shout out to Oswald Osborne Zarski Jacobs. I don't know if I've given him a shout out, but he's been really cute of late. He just runs around. He's only got 3.5 legs, and he just runs. Yeah, it's got like a little nub, a little cartilage nub that you can hold. And he is Thumper. He just runs around the house, barking orders. He thinks he's a Doberman, and any dog, any hawk, any of us could eat him alive if we wanted to. And but I really enjoyed his company of late. He's not a listener, and he doesn't understand English, sadly. But so this won't really land. But anyway, Ozzy. Love you, buddy.
That was the best shout out I think anyone's ever given. The last one. I will. So mine is this thing, a win probably for somebody at least. I was talking to the brother of somebody who works at STA who just came from Germany and ran an Ironman. And he was telling me about how there were multiple people in their 70s and 80s who took part. And it just blew my mind. This is a really hard competition. Like it takes months and months to prepare, even when you're in your peak years. And to be able to do that at that age was just mind blowing. And then this morning, I read about this 90-year-old grandmother who, for her 90th birthday, went skydiving. And she found it to be the most relaxing thing she could have done, a great way to celebrate this new year for herself. And I found that also very inspiring. I think people at that age showing a different way to live than what this impression usually is of how life is in your 80s and 90s is just really cool to see. So I thought these were two really cool things.
And we should pour one out for the guy, the Wagner Group.
Yeah.
What's his first name? Yevgeny Prigozhin.
Yeah.
Don't cross Vladimir Putin, man. Sorry to hear it.
Yeah.
Putin's wild like that. Doesn't let it go.
Asad, we hope you have a wonderful. Next week we're going to talk to you. You're going to be in Tuscany. Is that where you'll be?
No, I will be in Amalfi next week.
Oh, baby.
I mean, it's going to be night, but can we get? We're just going to talk about that the whole time. You just have
where in Amalfi?
I don't know. Some hotel. I'll tell you when I get there.
La Cyrenus?
No.
Capri?
B. Pelagio? I don't know.
Balmain?
I don't know. I need to check.
All right, fair enough.
Thanks. But I'll show you when I'm there.
Not one of the 60 towns I've been to, apparently.
Okay, guys.
Gents, it's been wonderful. This has been episode 20, milestone.
20.
If you make it to 20, you can make it anywhere. Asad Zaman, CEO of Sales Talent Agency, AJ Bruno, CEO of QuotaPath, Sam Jacobs, CEO of Pavilion. Give us 5 stars in the iTunes store. Thanks to our sponsors. Go get your tickets to GTM 2023. Join Pavilion. Hire a sales talent agency. Plan your compensation with QuotaPath. Write to us. We need a Gmail inbox if you have questions. We're gonna start doing some questions. But for now, we know that Jesse Shipman's a listener, Sam Slevin's a listener, Chris Amrod's a listener. We got some listeners. Slack us in the Pavilion Slack if you've got questions for us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
This episode was brought to you by Close, which helps organizations improve their sales win rates, build better products, and consistently uncover the real reasons they win and lose business. Visit freebuyerinterview.com to learn more. Closed, freebuyerinterview.com to learn more. Win-loss analysis is incredibly important. So thank you for listening, and thanks to Closed for sponsoring the show.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Topline. To learn more about the trends, news, and developments impacting the world of B2B SaaS, head to joinpavilion.com, where more than 10,000 of the world's top go-to market leaders go to achieve and unlock their full professional potential.